the best controller for Warzone and FPS games. Now, it doesn't matter where you go online, people will have controller preferences. But over the past couple of years, I've kind of become a controller scientist. I've been working on multiple titles like Warzone and Battlefield to bring about the most responsive, reactive, and accurate controller settings possible for as many people as possible. And in that time, I've used pretty much every controller under the sun. The Elite Series 2, basic controllers from Xbox and PlayStation. I've used the Astro C40, Scuff controllers, Battle Beavers, the Razer controller, and even some slightly more obscure ones as well. And today, I'm bringing you what is definitively, in my opinion, the best controller for accuracy in video games and in any FPS that you can play today and just released this month. Now, this all started a couple of months ago when I was running into regular compatibility issues with the Astro C40 controller, which introduced me to modularity. Now, modular controllers are the future. It doesn't matter which controller you buy, eventually, by design, your thumbstick will get stick drift. You cannot avoid it because it is inherent in analog stick design, and even Valve's most recent handheld PC, the Steam Deck, features replaceable thumbsticks to a certain degree. So I ended up going out and buying the only other modular controller I was aware of, the Thrustmaster eSwap for PlayStation 4. And after a few days of using this thing, I was left a little conflicted. Because on the one hand, it had incredible thumbsticks, some of the best in the business, really good software, and felt good to use. But on the other hand, it wasn't a perfect design just yet. So I reached out to them, and I spoke to them for a while and they reached out back to me, and as a result of me believing really firmly in this product and vice versa, I am now signed and sponsored with them, and got to working on a brand new controller that they released this month. And that is the Thrustmaster eSwap S. Everything that was good about the original controller, made better and packed with features that are perfect for first-person shooters, as well as general stick accuracy and responsiveness. Now yes, for full disclosure, just to make it clear, the controller I am advertising to you today, I am sponsored by that company. But to show you, it really came about from a mutual exchange effort. It wasn't just a case of, here's a paycheck, you're sponsored by us now, say our stuff is the best. I actively reached out to them to see if we could produce something. So this is it, the Thrustmaster eSwap S controller. There are multiple things about this controller which have been worked on meticulously to make it accurate, responsive, and feel good. And it was a combination of a few months worth of feedback to really get this thing where it should be. The first thing to note is that this is a modular controller. If the thumbsticks die or eventually develop stick drift, which all analog sticks do, then if your controller is still in warranty, you can get thumbstick replacements for free, and if it's out of warranty, you can purchase thumbsticks for a relatively low price, which means you haven't just bought a really expensive controller that's now useless. This is something that's built and designed to last for a very, very long time, and is supposed to be a value purchase. Speaking of price, when talking with Thrustmaster, we wanted this controller to really undercut everything else that existed before this. So you can buy this controller for £109, $129, or 129 euros, which is substantially lower than most other Pro controllers on the market, which is something that I think is really important, because Pro controllers were starting to get into crazy price territories. So let's talk about the feature sets. What makes this controller the best or most accurate or best for FPS as I have so proclaimed? And the first one is the design of the analog sticks. Now, every single controller has dead zones, and dead zones are inherent on both PlayStation, Xbox, PC, regardless of what you use a controller on. Now, what's special about these is that these are the Nxg Mini Sticks, which out of the box come with a 1% dead zone in the software, meaning this is one of the lowest dead zone controllers out of the box that you can purchase. The sticks have both a smooth feeling, but also with some decent stick retention, and you can actually change the height of the sticks depending on whether you get the S2 mini sticks or the S5 replacement sticks, which are also available as well. And both of these Nxg mini sticks, the S2 and S5, utilize similar philosophies, but you can have different caps, for example, on the S5, and also different heights as well. The S2s are a little bit shorter, The S5s come with a longer approach, and you can even replace the tops of them with a domed controller ridge if that's something you prefer. So minimal dead zones is the first critical feature. This is something that's absolutely necessary, and more importantly, it utilizes radial dead zones, not axial dead zones. Now, radial dead zones are when the dead zone starts from the surface center and works its way outwards in a complete circle, whereas axial dead zones represent corner triangles around the edges of the controller, and the further your controller gets into that range, the more the movement of the controller is cancelled out. Axial dead zones are often used to cancel out movement whilst aiming up, down, left or right in order to make the controller feel less shaky, but in reality it could be super inaccurate, and this is why Xbox controllers in particular feel very, very inaccurate because they have axial dead zones baked into them. Only on the Elite Series 1 and 2 can you change the axial dead zones to radial dead zones, and even then it isn't as accurate as these mini sticks. PlayStation controllers all use radial dead zones by design, and honestly they are some of the most accurate, so this is effectively an evolutionary step above a PlayStation analog stick. The next critical feature is software customization, because no Pro controller can claim to be a Pro controller without being software customizable. The eSwap S has different profiles which are available and full button mapping. And on top of that, you also get the ability to customize the sensitivities of both your individual sticks, which function on a linear response curve, as well as the ability to customize the sensitivities of both of your triggers, which is great because if you're somebody like me, I don't like the retention or delay in standard controllers. There are a lot of Pro controllers out there that claim to be Pro controllers, but don't have the software customization options. And that's something that you just can't do. The ability to rebind button mapping is critical, but also the ability to mess around with the sensitivities of your sticks is something that is equally important. Speaking of sticks, triggers, buttons, so on and so forth, this controller features two back paddles, and both the top and bottom of the paddle itself is a tactile design. So if your hands sit high on the controller or low on the controller, you can still achieve a really good back paddle press without having to fidget around too much, which is super important. And on top of that, all of the buttons on the controller are tactile buttons. Each one kind of feels like a mouse click. Both the D-pad and the XYAB, for example, are fully tactile buttons that are as close as you can get to a mouse click on a controller. There's no spongy designs here, these are clicky, tactile, and effective. The controller is also a little bit smaller and more compact, so it fits well in the hand and has a hatched grooved feel, and it also utilizes a braided USB-C cable, and any USB-C cable is compatible with the controller. It also comes with trigger stoppers as well if you're the kind of person who prefers a much shorter range of movement on either trigger. When you combine the tactile buttons, the tactile panels, the fact that this has one of the lowest dead zones that you can get in any given controller, the braided USB-C, pretty much all of the features together, you get a really, really solid controller. It's the best I've used for general responsiveness, reactivity, for accuracy, and honestly, working on the controller and giving feedback for it was great. And the most critical thing is modularity. You know, you're spending €129, $129, or £109 on a controller. The last thing you want is in 2 to 3 years' time to have to completely buy another brand new professional controller because the sticks have stopped working. You can replace the sticks. That's the genius behind this design. It doesn't matter if your stick dies, it's simply one swap away. Hell, you can even customize with it. You can get red sticks, blue LED stick, green sticks, whatever it so happens to be that you enjoy, or a color palette that you feel is tasteful. When I reached out to Thrustmaster those couple of months ago, it was genuinely down to the fact that I felt they had a really serious contender and a really solid project that completely undercuts things like the Xbox Elite Series 2 and other controllers which aren't even modular, which means that when the sticks die, the thing may as well become a paperweight. So I wanted to show you guys this controller today, because I genuinely believe that it has some of the most competitive features and compelling features on both PC and on Xbox. And by the way, if you're on Xbox, you don't even need a PC to customize the controller. You can also download the customization app off of the Xbox store onto your Xbox. Now, hopefully in the future, you'll see a PS5 variant of this controller, and everybody is basically waiting on PlayStation to start allowing licensing for third-party controllers. If and when that happens, I'll definitely be speaking to Thrustmaster about producing a PlayStation controller other than the old PS4 model that they have. But if you're somebody who's on PS4, that model does exist, although it is a little bit bulkier and has some subtle differences. But ultimately, what I feel has been made here is a very, very compelling and competitive FPS controller for one of the lowest prices on the market, and one that's pro-consumer, one that's supposed to last, and if it doesn't last, you can replace the sticks for a very low cost. I hope you folks found this video useful, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section below. I really wanted to bring you this today because the landscape for controllers is very challenging, and using everything from a Scuff to a Bow Beaver to a Razor to an Elite Series 2 is not necessarily something everybody can do in order to create the best distinction, but it's something I've been able to do. So I wanted to tell you about this pad today. If you found this video useful, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you again in the next one.